I'm Margaret Ashby, set 79 years old, and every morning starts the same with the creak of joints and the quiet hum of a kettle while the rest of Millhaven is still asleep by the time the sun rises over the rooftops. I've already made my tea, brushed a wrinkle out of my cardigan, and straightened the hem of the skirt. My daughter-in-law says, "Looks too sensible tonight." My oldest son is hosting a dinner to celebrate his promotion, and he asked if I'd join them at a fancy place called Caro's. I told him, of course I'd come. What he doesn't know is that Caro's belongs to me, and by the time dessert is served, they'll all be eating in the palm of my hand before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. I was born right here in Millhaven, married young, had 2 sons, and buried my husband nearly 2 decades ago. Harold always believed in keeping our heads down and letting the work speak for itself. We never flaunted what we built, just kept growing, one quiet year at a time. My boys Jackson and Nathan grew up thinking their father ran everything, and their mother just smiled and poured the coffee when Harold passed. They didn't ask what I wanted or if I was okay. They split up the inheritance, argued over the house, and pushed me to downsize. You shouldn't be alone in that big place, Jackson had said. Maybe it's time you looked at assisted living instead of arguing. I let them think I'd followed their advice. I sold the house just like they asked, but they never thought to ask what I did with the money, didn't know about the trust Harold and I built, or that I'd taken full control of Ashby Holdings and didn't just live off dividends, but ran the whole operation myself while they thought I was baking pies and playing bridge. I was reviewing real estate portfolios, signing contracts, meeting with lawyers in the neighborhood where I keep my small apartment. Folks call me Miss Margaret. They know me as the quiet widow who bakes in the fall and plants geraniums in the spring. Only one person knows the truth, and that's my neighbor Edith. We've been friends since our kids were in middle school, and she's the only one who's ever seen me switch from walking shoes to heels in the same day. My apartment is plain furniture's old, but well cared for. The teacups are porcelain, the kind folks walk past in antique shops without realizing they're worth more than a weekend getaway on the coast. That morning started like any other. My cardigan hung by the door. My shoes lined up neat and sensible in the rack. I was midway through buttering toast when the phone rang. It was Jackson. He never calls unless there's an agenda. "Hey, Mom, just a heads up. Big dinner tomorrow night, 6:30 at Caro's, celebrating the new title." I congratulated him. He barely paused before adding, "Serena says you should wear something nice. It's a high-end place, lots of big names." "I'll try to look presentable," I said. "Just don't wear that gray thing with the buttons." I hung up after he did, stood there at the counter, and finished buttering my toast. Later that day, I changed into my work suit at the office. Black slacks, cream blouse, pearls, simple but sharp. Dorian was waiting with the quarterly reports. He's been with me for over a decade, one of the few people I trust enough to call me by my first name without asking. Jackson's got his dinner at Caro's. I told him while reviewing invoices. Dorian raised an eyebrow. "You sure that's a good idea?" He picked the place, not me. The staff at Caro's wouldn't recognize me in my cardigan. Most of them had only ever seen me in tailored jackets and heels. Besides, we'd rotate floor staff for weekends, and tomorrow was no exception. That evening, I sat back down in my apartment, brushed a hand across the table where old photos still sat. Harold in his Sunday suit, Jackson and Nathan in high school ties. None of them ever asked about this life. I built the one beyond casseroles and birthday cards. But the thing about a life spent being overlooked is that eventually, people forget to look at all. And that's when you get to choose how the story goes tomorrow. I'd walk into Caro's through the front door like a guest, let them seat me, let them talk. And then we'd see what kind of dinner this really was. The cab dropped me off 20 minutes before the reservation. The steps leading up to Caro's were polished marble just as I remembered them. I paused for a moment, looking up at the carved brass lanterns flanking the entry. The doorman, a young man I'd never seen before, stepped aside and opened the door with a polite nod. He didn't recognize me, which was just as well. Inside, the chandeliers glowed like amber glass, casting warm light across white tablecloths and polished wood. I asked for the Ashby reservation. The hostess checked her clipboard, then led me to a corner table by the window. It was one of the best in the room, one I'd chosen personally when we first designed the floor plan. A few minutes later, the first to arrive were Jackson and Serena. He wore a dark suit gold watch, just visible beneath the cuff. She had on a navy blue cocktail dress, neckline trimmed in beads. Her heels clicked across the floor as they approached. "Mom, you're early," Jackson said, sounding more surprised than pleased. "Glad you made it. I figured it's better to be early than late," I said, standing to greet them. Serena gave me a kiss that missed my cheek by an inch. "You look nice," she said, her eyes scanning my dress, my shoes, the pearl necklace. She hadn't expected this version of me. Their teenagers, Emily and Chase, trailed behind them. Emily in a black dress, her arms crossed, Chase in a wrinkled button-down and scuffed sneakers. Neither said much beyond a mumbled hi. Nathan arrived next with his 12-year-old twins, Lily and James. He gave me a quick hug, then gestured to the kids to say hello. Lily smiled. James offered a quick wave. Nathan glanced around the room. "This place is upscale," he said. "Yes, it is," I replied. The waiter came by to take drink orders. Jackson asked for a bottle of red from the reserve list. Serena asked for sparkling water. Nathan requested a whiskey neat. The kids ordered soda and Shirley Temples. I stuck with my Chardonnay. "Did you already start drinking?" Serena asked, eyeing my glass. "I arrived early. I thought I'd enjoy a sip while I waited." She gave a small nod, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just pace yourself tonight, okay? Let's keep things light." Frederick, the waiter, returned with the drinks and handed out the menus. His service was polished and professional. He'd only been with us a few months. I was glad Dorian had chosen someone who wouldn't recognize me in this role. Jackson took a look at the wine list. "Impressive," he muttered. "They've got the '09 Merlot from Haven Ridge. Pairs well with lamb," Frederick offered. "Perfect," Jackson said. "We'll have that then." As the appetizers were brought out, carpaccio, truffle, arancini, Caesar salads, the conversation shifted toward Jackson's promotion. "I'm now a full partner," he said, smiling broadly. "The firm's already assigned me 2 new clients in the finance sector. Big accounts." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said. "I'm proud of you." Serena leaned forward. "We're thinking of buying in Marigold Estates. Gated community, top schools, full amenities. I knew the neighborhood. Ashby Holdings had developed half the lots there." "It's a lovely area," I said. Chase piped up. "The houses there are huge. One of them has an elevator inside." "Let's not talk about money at the table," Serena said, giving him a look. "You were just talking about houses?" he mumbled. Serena let it go. Emily looked up from her plate. "I got a letter from Princeton. Conditional admission." "That's wonderful," I said. "Congratulations." "It's not final yet," she said quickly. "Everyone's applying Ivy. No one's guaranteed." "She's being modest," Serena said. "Only the top applicants get those letters." I smiled. "You're already making us proud." Emily hesitated. "Grandma, the brooch you gave me? Where did it come from?" "It was my grandmother's," I said. "She wore it to her wedding." "It's pretty," she said softly. "I don't wear it much, but I keep it in a box." "She prefers modern styles," Serena added quickly. "You know how it is. Kids today don't go for vintage." The main course arrived lamb with rosemary, a dish I'd approved the week prior. The aroma filled the table. Serena praised the presentation, and Jackson raised his glass in a casual toast. "To success," he said. "And to new beginnings. To new houses," Serena added. Frederick refilled glasses, cleared empty plates, and brought dessert menus. I hadn't said much during dinner. There wasn't space for it. Between Serena's chatter, Jackson's client talk, and Nathan checking his watch every few minutes, I'd been reduced to polite nods and brief smiles. When I reached for the dessert menu, Serena glanced at me. "Are you sure you want that Margaret with your cholesterol?" "My numbers are fine," I replied. "You're not taking any risks, are you?" Nathan asked. "Because I really cannot help if something happens. The kids work. It's a lot right now. I'm managing," I said. "Thank you for your concern." Jackson set his napkin down. "You know, I read about a new retirement community in the western suburbs. It's private modern. Good care. You might want to look into it." "I'm happy where I am, but it's just you there," Serena said. "That can't be easy. What if you fall? What if something happens at night? I have a phone and a neighbor who checks on me. She's older than you." "Isn't she?" Jackson asked. 3 years, I said. "But she's still sharp." Jackson leaned back. "It's not ideal. A nursing home would offer you safety structure, and we could visit on a schedule." "Once a month," Serena added. "That way, no one feels overwhelmed." I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. They'd built a plan without asking if I wanted one. The plates were being cleared when Jackson's colleague approached the table, a man in a tailored gray suit with a firm handshake and a booming voice. "Jackson, good to see you." The family introductions were made quickly. When he got to me, Jackson said, "And this is my mother, Margaret." The man nodded politely, then turned back to Jackson and launched into a conversation about clients' commissions and contracts. Serena spotted someone across the dining room and waved her over another woman from one of her committees, blonde, chatty, quick to slide into a seat and begin talking. More people arrived. Within minutes, the table was surrounded by half a dozen new faces, all laughing, sipping wine, and catching up. I sat quietly, pushed slightly to the edge of the table, watching as they leaned in and talked over one another. None of them looked at me. None of them included me. Nathan's daughter tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, I need to use the bathroom." "Not now, honey. Just wait. I can take her," I offered. He nodded, relieved. We walked together through the soft-lit hallway toward the powder room. She looked up at me while washing her hands. "I like this place," she said. "It's pretty." "I'm glad you think so. Have you been here before?" "Yes, many times." Back at the table, our seats had been taken. The noise had doubled. More wine, more laughter, more of Jackson's world on display. I stood beside the group, unsure where to go. Nathan came over and lowered his voice. "Mom, maybe it's best if you head home. You look tired." "I'm fine. Still, the night's going long, and we're heading to a bar after this." Serena joined him, glass in hand. "There's a jazz group playing at Skylight. It's more contemporary. Probably not your scene." "I can call a cab," I said. "Oh, you're the best," she said, turning back to her group. "You always understand." Jackson gave my shoulder a pat. "You've never really been one for parties anyway." I picked up my purse and stepped away, unsure whether to feel invisible or relieved. Just then, across the dining room, I saw Dorian heading toward me with Frederick in tow. Something in his face told me the night wasn't over. "Is there a problem?" I asked as they approached. "There's a situation," Dorian said quietly. "A customer's demanding to see the owner. Says he was served a bad dish. Chef's ready to throw him out." I nodded. "Let me get my bag." I walked back toward the table I'd just left. Jackson saw me returning. "Mom, I thought you were heading home." I said, lifting my purse from the chair. "But it looks like I've got one more thing to take care of before I do." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I smiled gently. "Let's just call it an adventure." Then I turned and followed Dorian into the main dining room, where the next course of the night was already waiting. The moment I stepped into the main dining room, I could hear the voice before I saw the man. loud, indignant, and drawing more attention with every word. "This is unacceptable," he barked. "You call this fine dining I've eaten in Paris, Florence, San Francisco. I know what spoiled fish smells like." Raymond, our head chef, was standing stiffly by the table, arms crossed, his lips pulled tight. He was furious, but holding back for now. Two waiters hovered nearby, trying to keep things calm without escalating. The guest, a middle-aged man in a navy blazer, was half out of his chair, pointing at his plate like it had personally insulted him. Dorian slowed beside me. "We've already offered a replacement dish," he murmured. "He's refusing anything else unless he speaks to the owner." I nodded and stepped forward, smoothing my skirt with one hand as I approached. "Good evening," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I understand there's been a problem with your meal." The man turned toward me, eyes narrowing slightly. "And who might you be?" "My name is Margaret Ashby. I'm the owner of Caro's." He blinked, clearly caught off guard. That's right." For a moment, the tension quieted. Raymond exhaled, but didn't move. The other diners nearby had gone silent, heads tilted just enough to listen without appearing rude. "I ordered the grilled halibut," the man said, regaining some of his bluster. It came out with a sour, fermented smell. "It's inedible." Raymond's jaw tensed again. "It's the marinade. A citrus lavender reduction." I held up a hand. "Raymond, thank you. Let me handle it." He stepped back. I looked at the plate, which had only a few bites missing. I leaned slightly forward, not touching the food, but close enough to pick up the scent. "You're right," I said. "It does have a strong aroma. That's from the reduction we use. It's a specialty one that isn't to everyone's taste." I turned to the guest. "You should have been informed when you ordered. I'm sorry that didn't happen." He hesitated, watching me. "I'd like to replace the dish for you. Anything on the menu, and your next glass of wine is on the house." His shoulders lowered just a fraction. "Well, I appreciate the gesture." I nodded to the waiter, who stepped in to retrieve the plate and hand him a menu. "We always want our guests to leave happy," I said quietly. "Thank you for your patience." He gave a small nod. I turned to Raymond. "Let's send over the Cabernet." "The 2010. Raymond gave a sharp nod and retreated toward the kitchen. Just as I turned to leave, I saw movement near the edge of the room. Jackson stood by the pillar with Serena at his side. His face was pale, his brows drawn tight. Serena looked stunned, her mouth slightly open. Nathan trailed behind them, eyes locked on me. Mom Jackson stepped closer. "What's going on?" I walked toward them slowly. Something needed attention. "I took care of it," the waiter said. "You're the owner?" Serena asked, voice tight. "I am." For a moment, no one said anything. Serena looked at Dorian as if hoping for another explanation. He stepped forward smoothly. "Yes, Mrs. Ashby owns Caro's," he said, "and the company that operates it." Jackson stared at me like he was trying to rewrite a memory. "But when?" How I folded my hands gently in front of me. "After your father passed, I stepped in fully. I've been managing things quietly ever since." "That can't be," Nathan said. "You live in a one-bedroom apartment with thrift store furniture. That's what you saw," I said. "What you expected to see." Serena shook her head. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I tilted my head. "Did you ever ask?" Jackson looked like he might laugh, but the sound never came. "Ashby Holdings, the downtown lots. The real estate arm. That's you." "Yes. I thought Dad sold that off." "He didn't. We held it jointly. And I still do." Serena crossed her arms. "So you've been lying to us, playing some kind of game." "I never lied. I just didn't correct your assumptions." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. All these years we thought you were barely getting by. I never said I was. You drew your conclusions and never looked further. A silence fell between us. Dorian stepped back, giving us space. I remember Jackson said slowly when Dad passed you said you were going to sell the house. I did. And you moved into that little apartment? That's true, but you didn't downsize. No. Serena's voice had grown sharper. Then why let us think you were barely scraping by? Why show up in worn sweaters and cardigans? Why let us suggest nursing homes if you didn't need one? Because I said I wanted to see how you would treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer you. Nathan looked down at his shoes. You were all so quick to step in, to rearrange my life. No one asked what I wanted. No one asked if I was all right. Serena gave a short laugh. So, this is revenge. No. It was curiosity at first. Then it became a way to protect myself. Jackson shook his head. This is crazy. Is it? I asked. Or is it just the first time you've had to see me as someone other than the person who made your lunch and wrapped your birthday gifts? The sound of a tray clinking in the distance broke the silence. I think we should take this somewhere else, I said. We're attracting attention. They followed me through the side hall to the office door near the kitchen. I opened it and stepped inside. The office was warm and quiet, paintings on the wall, a photo of Harold and me on the bookshelf. The lights were soft overhead. I took the chair behind the desk. They sat across from me, still processing. I never wanted to hurt you, I said. Jackson rested his hands on his knees. We just never imagined. I know. Nathan cleared his throat. Why now? Why let it out tonight? I didn't plan to, I said. But sometimes life has other ideas. Serena was the last to speak. What happens now? I looked at them each in turn. That depends on you. I reached for the photo on the shelf. Harold, in his best suit, smiling beside me on the day we opened the restaurant. I'm still your mother, I said. Nothing's changed in that regard, but I'd like to be seen as a whole person. Someone with a past, a voice in a life worth asking about. The room stayed quiet. We never meant to ignore that, Jackson said. But you did, I replied. And now we can either move forward or not. That's your choice. Outside the door, I could hear the soft hum of plates and silverware, the low murmur of voices returning to normal. Somewhere in that room, my purse still sat beside an empty wine glass. I didn't know what they'd say next, or what they'd do. But for the first time in a long while, the masks were off. And that was a start. By the time I got home that night, the streets had gone quiet. The porch light clicked on as I stepped up, keys ready in my hand. I didn't bother turning on the overheads when I came in. Just set my bag on the entryway table and slipped off my shoes. There was leftover soup in the fridge, but I wasn't hungry. I made a cup of chamomile instead and took it to the armchair by the window. From there, I could see the corner of the old maple tree Harold planted after Nathan was born. Its leaves were just starting to curl at the edges, early signs of fall. The house was still. I wrapped the throw blanket over my legs and let the silence settle. No phone calls came. No texts. The next morning passed the same way. Nothing from Jackson or Serena. Nothing from Nathan. I checked my email, watered the plant in the kitchen window, paid a gas bill. Dorian sent over a brief update on weekend reservations. Raymond left a note about a supplier issue with the seafood distributor. I replied to both. By late afternoon, I walked to the market, picked up lemons and rosemary, and came home by the same route. I didn't see a soul I recognized. The days that followed stayed quiet. No invitations, no calls, just space. On Thursday, I stopped by the restaurant in the late afternoon. Frederick greeted me at the door with his usual polish. Raymond had just finished prepping the evening specials. He offered me a small plate to taste braised duck with a plum glaze. It was excellent. I reviewed the upcoming holiday events with Dorian. The private dining room was booked solid for the month of December. A retirement party, 2 anniversaries, 1 small wedding. The end of year was always full, and we both liked it that way. As I gathered my things to leave, Dorian hesitated. "Your son," he said gently. He called the main line, asked for a reservation for Sunday brunch. Under his name, no. He booked under a colleague's, but it was him. I nodded once. "Thank you." That Sunday, I stayed home. The following week, a card appeared in my mailbox. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. Inside was a brief note. "Mom, we were shocked. Still are. I don't know how to explain what we're feeling, but it's complicated. I didn't know you were carrying all that. Let's talk soon. Nathan." I folded it and placed it on the kitchen counter. 2 days later, I got a call from Serena. "I wanted to say, I've been thinking about the other night," she said. "And maybe I came off harsh." "You were surprised," I said. "So were you," she replied. Then silence. "Emily keeps asking questions about the restaurant, about you. She's welcome to stop by any time. I'll let her know." Another pause. "I guess I just didn't expect any of it. That night you walked into the dining room like someone else." "I was just being myself," I said. "I'm not sure I know who that is anymore. Maybe it's time we both find out." After the call, I sat at the table letting the quiet return. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a wide open space where something used to be. That Friday, I hosted a small luncheon at the restaurant. It was something we did quarterly for our senior staff. I arrived early, helped arrange the seating, and made sure the wine glasses were polished. Around noon, our chef de cuisine brought out the first course arugula salad with roasted pear. The room filled with laughter, with stories of old openings, staff memories, and kitchen mishaps no one would ever put on paper. After the meal, Dorian stepped up and thanked everyone for their loyalty. Then he looked toward me. And to Margaret, he said, for building something we're proud to be a part of. I stood, offered a smile, and raised my glass. "It's always been about people," I said. "Not buildings, not books. People who show up and stay." They clapped. Nothing formal, just warm hands in a warm room. That night I walked home again. Cooler air this time. I noticed a light on at Mrs. Agan's place, my neighbor 2 doors down. Her grandson must have come by. I waved through the window. When I let myself inside, I saw something sitting on the entryway table. A manila envelope with my name on it. No postage, just handwritten letters in a neat, careful script. Inside was a stack of photographs. Old ones, black and white, some faded color. Pictures of me in front of our first property holding blueprints. One of Harold holding a pair of brass keys. A ribbon-cutting ceremony. A fundraiser. A photo of Jackson, Nathan, and Emily when they were children, standing beneath the old Caro's sign in its original location. At the bottom of the stack, a small note. "You were never invisible. We just didn't know how to look." No name, no signature. I placed the photos back in the envelope and carried it to the armchair by the window. Outside, the maple leaves were starting to fall. I didn't know if that note had come from Jackson or Serena or even Emily. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that something was shifting. The silence was giving way to something else, and for the first time in years, I let myself sit with it, not as a mother or a placeholder, but as someone full and still becoming. The invitation came printed on thick cream cardstock with gold trim, elegant, understated, meant for people who paid attention to those kinds of details. Millhaven Historical Society's annual Autumn Gala, held at the City Library, black tie, optional dinner, and live auction to follow. I'd attended a few in the past, always quietly, always as someone's guest. This year, my name was listed as a featured sponsor. Dorian had handled the paperwork weeks earlier. Ashby Holdings had donated one of the restored townhomes on Pine Avenue for silent auction use, a weekend stay with all proceeds going to the library's building fund. I hadn't planned on going myself, but something about the envelope made me pause that morning. I set it on the table beside my tea and left it there until the steam from the mug curled upward and vanished. On the night of the event, I took my time getting ready. Simple black dress, long sleeves, clean neckline. A brooch Harold had given me in '82, gold and amber, shaped like a wheat stalk. I fastened it to the left side and pulled my shawl around my shoulders. The library's west wing had been converted into an event space years ago. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, warm amber sconces that cast soft light over the dark oak shelves. People moved in quiet circles near the reception table, wine glasses in hand. The room smelled faintly of old books and lavender polish. Dorian greeted me near the entryway. He wore a dark gray suit and held a program in one hand. "You made it," he said. "I did. I reserved your seat at the second table on the right, far enough from the podium but close enough to be seen." He handed me the program. I glanced down and saw my name listed again, this time beneath a heading that read, Local Legacy Contributors. "I thought that was just for show," I said. "It's not," Dorian replied. "You're being introduced during the remarks." He gave a small smile. "You can step out if you like, but I don't think you will." I kept the program folded in my hand as we made our way inside. The dinner passed in a gentle blur: seasonal squash soup, roasted chicken with thyme, a pear tart that wasn't too sweet. The hum of conversation stayed light, pleasant, unforced. Across the table sat a woman named Ruth Langford, widow of a former councilman. Beside her, a retired school principal and his sister, both longtime donors. I spoke when spoken to, listened when they shared updates on their children and gardens and small triumphs in physical therapy. Then the lights dimmed slightly and the microphone came on. A man from the board took the stage. Silver hair, confident voice, the kind of person used to being handed the mic. He thanked the guests, shared progress on the library's renovation plans, and listed donors alphabetically. Then he paused. "We'd also like to acknowledge one name that many of you know, but perhaps not fully. A woman whose quiet contributions over the past 20 years have helped preserve several historic buildings in our downtown district. Who's given generously not for plaques or publicity, but because she believes in what this town holds." He gestured toward our table. "Mrs. Margaret Ashby." Heads turned. A few people clapped. Ruth gave me a gentle nudge. I stood slowly, nodded once, smiled. The applause was brief but warm. I sat down again without fanfare. Later that evening, while guests wandered toward the auction tables, I walked quietly along the back wall of the library, past the archives room, and toward the older stacks that were closed off for the night. The halls there were cooler, quieter. The sound of voices faded behind me. I paused near a row of framed photographs, Millhaven in the 1940s, then 1960s, then present day. One photo showed a row of buildings before renovation windows, boarded paint peeling. Another showed the same row years later restored. My name wasn't anywhere on the plaque beneath them. Just the words, Community Restoration Initiative, and a date. Behind me, I heard footsteps. "I didn't know," Jackson said softly. I turned. "I saw your name in the program," he continued, and then again during the remarks. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I wasn't sure I would be." He looked down at his shoes, then back up. Emily insisted we come. She's working on a school project about local women in business. She wanted to see the auction. She's here with Serena at the children's table display. They've got coloring sheets and bookmarks. I smiled faintly. Sounds about right. Jackson hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why keep it all separate? The business, the donations, even the brooch. I never saw you wear it growing up. I wore it once. The day we opened our first storefront. Your father gave it to me with the keys. After he passed, I kept it put away. Jackson nodded slowly. I think he said we made a mistake, treating you like someone who just needed watching over. We thought we were helping. I know I said, and I let you. He leaned against the wall beside me. Emily wants to interview you for her project. She made a list of questions and everything. I'd be honored. He looked relieved. She doesn't know the whole story, just that you've built something real. She'll learn the rest in time. He looked toward the front of the room where Serena was speaking with another parent. I think she's proud of you, he said. I think we all are. We just didn't see it soon enough. It's never too late to start seeing clearly, I said. We stood in silence for another moment, watching guests wander past auction baskets and poster boards filled with photos of the library's history. Then the speaker's voice returned, inviting final bids before closing. Jackson gave a small wave and stepped away to rejoin his family. I stayed back for another moment, hand-brushing the edge of the photo frame beside me. The plaque caught the light just enough to make the date gleam. Not everything has to be named to be known. Some things speak for themselves in time. The call came early on a Monday. I had just finished pouring my coffee when the phone rang. Dorian's name flashed across the screen. I answered, thinking it would be about the wine shipment we'd been waiting on, or maybe a change in the weekend schedule. Instead, his voice came low, careful. Have you checked the Gazette this morning? No, not yet, I said, setting my cup down. There's a headline you'll want to see, about the Ashby Group. I didn't say anything. They're merging, he continued. Caro Enterprises. It's already signed. Front page. I stood at the kitchen counter for a moment longer, then reached for the newspaper still folded by the front door. There it was, below the fold, but bold enough. Ashby-Caro merger to reshape regional real estate holdings. They'd used Jackson's name and a quote from one of the junior executives. A photo showed the two company logos side by side. But what stopped me was the second paragraph. A mention of a decades-long vision set in motion by Jackson Ashby, founder and principal. I read it twice. Then I folded the paper and set it aside. Later that morning, I walked into the office. Dorian was already there, his jacket slung over the chair tie loosened just slightly. He handed me a copy of the internal memo. It was real. The sale, the merger, the reshuffling of leadership titles. None of this came through our side, he said. It was handled between their board and Jackson's. It doesn't affect operations directly, but it will eventually. The name, the properties, the history. He trailed off. I looked down at the memo again. At the bottom was a line, effective January 1st, 2026, the legacy of Ashby Holdings will continue under the Caro Ashby brand family. Legacy. A word that meant something different to those who had never built it from the ground up. I sat quietly for a moment, then opened my desk drawer and pulled out a set of folders I hadn't touched in years. Original deeds, photos, blueprints, letters from city council, the first property we bought in 1978, the one Harold and I had renovated ourselves over 2 summers with money scraped together from savings and a second mortgage. I ran my fingers along the edge of the oldest one. It still had my handwriting on the label. That evening, I took a walk through the old district, past the bakery that used to be a paint store, past the florist where our second office once stood. I paused outside the building on Franklin Street, the one we bought just before Nathan was born. It had been turned into a boutique law firm now, but the bones were still ours. The brass door handle was original. I remembered choosing it from a catalog and thinking how sturdy it felt in my hand. The next morning, I asked Dorian to arrange a meeting. He hesitated. "Do you want to go through Jackson?" he asked. "No," I said. "Through the Gazette." He raised an eyebrow. "We'll write something," I said. "An open letter. Not defensive. Just the truth. Where it started, what it meant. What still matters." Dorian nodded slowly. "I'll draft something and bring it by tonight." He did. We sat at my dining room table with 2 copies marking changes in pencil. When it was done, I sent it in with a short note. They printed it in the Sunday edition under Voices from the Community. No photo. No headline. Just my name and the first line. In 1978, I stood on a dirt lot with a folded blueprint in my hands and a loan co-signed by my father-in-law. The letter spoke plainly. It named the buildings, the years, the restoration efforts. It listed the people who had come and gone. It ended with a single line: "A name is not a legacy. Work is." On Monday morning, the phones rang all day. Former clients, friends, people I hadn't seen in 20 years. A handwritten card arrived from a retired librarian who used to live above one of our properties. A bouquet showed up from someone who'd been married in one of our restored homes. By Wednesday, an editor from a regional architecture journal called and asked if I'd be open to an interview. Dorian stood in the doorway of my office as I hung up. "They're seeing it now," he said quietly. "They always could," I replied. "They just didn't know where to look." That evening, I got a voicemail from Jackson. "Mom, I saw the letter. It was beautifully written. I think we should talk soon." I saved it but didn't reply right away. Instead, I walked to the front window and looked out toward the street. The maple tree had lost nearly all its leaves. Its branches reached upward in clean, stark lines against the early dusk. The world was shifting, not loudly, not fast, but steadily, piece by piece, and I wasn't standing behind it anymore. The envelope came in early March, tucked between a utility bill and a seed catalog. Cream paper gold embossing on the flap, the return address marked City Hall. I opened it at the kitchen table without much thought. Inside was a formal invitation from the Mill Haven Preservation Council. They were hosting their annual spring luncheon and awards ceremony, and this year I was to be one of the honorees. My name was listed alongside 2 others, a local historian who'd published a book on the town's early settlers, and a high school teacher who had restored the school's original bell tower with her students. It was unexpected, but not unwelcome. I tucked the invitation in the corner of the counter and went about my day. Dorian stopped by that afternoon. "They reached out to me too," he said. "Wanted to confirm your years of service with the Restoration Guild. I told them you started before I could drive." I smiled. "I suppose I did. I hope you'll go," he said. "I will." When the day arrived, I chose a soft blue jacket and a strand of pearls that had belonged to my mother. The luncheon was held in the community center downtown, in the same room where Harold and I had attended our first neighborhood association meeting decades earlier. The tables were dressed in white linen, each with a small floral arrangement in the center. A modest buffet was set up near the back chicken salad fruit lemon bars. Everything smelled like spring. The room was full, but not crowded. People greeted each other with gentle warmth. I saw familiar faces, neighbors, former clients, women I hadn't spoken to in years. I found my name on a card near the center table and took my seat. The event began with brief remarks from the council chair, then moved through recognitions and acknowledgments. The teacher spoke first, sweet and nervous, her voice shaking just a little as she thanked her students. Then the historian, who stood with practiced ease, mentioning footnotes and archives and the weight of storytelling. Then they called my name. Mrs. Margaret Ashby has quietly shaped the look and feel of Millhaven for over 4 decades, the speaker said. Her eye for preservation, her steady leadership, and her unwillingness to let history be erased have given us back more than buildings. She's given us belonging. There was soft applause as I made my way to the front. I stood behind the podium, looking out at the sea of polite smiles and folded hands. I'm honored, I began. But most of all, I'm grateful. I kept it brief. I mentioned Harold and how it started with one small property and a leaky roof. I named a few of the old streets Franklin Maple Pine and said how proud I was that people still called them home. I thanked the council and sat back down. Afterward, guests lingered by the display boards set up around the room. Photos of before and after renovations, old newspaper clippings, letters of support. One of the displays had a timeline of the historic district's growth, and in the corner, a laminated page titled, Ashby's Corner Then and Now. Beside it stood Serena. She was holding a notepad, her brow furrowed in concentration. Working on something, I asked gently. She looked up. Emily's history project. She wants to include a section on downtown architecture. She picked a good place to start. Serena hesitated. You're listed here, all over these displays. But your name doesn't come up much at home. I guess I didn't realize how much of this was yours. It isn't just mine, I said. But yes, I was there for a lot of it. She's really proud of you, Serena said. Emily, I mean. I nodded. I'm proud of her, too. There was a pause between us. I don't think we ever meant to overlook any of it, Serena said. We just thought you were comfortable being quiet. Comfort doesn't always mean being silent, I replied. She smiled faintly. You know, Jackson cried in the car. After your letter ran in the Gazette? I didn't answer. He said he'd never read anything that made him feel more ashamed and more proud at the same time. I looked down at the timeline on the board at the photograph of Harold standing beside a young contractor in front of the Pine Street row house. His tie was crooked. My handwriting labeled the year underneath. He's a good man, I said. He just needed time. Serena took a deep breath. He's planning something. For you. He wants to make things right. I looked at her gently. Some things don't need fixing. Just understanding. Later that week, I found a package on my porch. Inside was a framed print, an artist's sketch of the Franklin Street building done in soft charcoal. On the back, a note in Jackson's handwriting. For the woman who gave Millhaven its memory. A week after the luncheon, I came home from my morning walk to find Emily sitting on the top step of my porch knees, tucked up holding a paper bag in her lap. She stood as I approached, brushing crumbs from her jeans. I brought you something, she said, handing over the bag. Inside was a lemon scone still warm, a little crooked, but sweet-smelling and soft. Mom helped, she added quickly. But I measured everything. We sat together on the porch for a while. She asked about the garden, pointed to the rose bush near the side gate, and asked if it would bloom again this year. I told her it would if spring stayed kind. She didn't say much after that, just leaned her head lightly against my arm, the way she used to when she was small. Later that afternoon, Jackson called. Don't make plans for Sunday, he said. We're doing something for you. I asked what kind of something. It's not public, he said. Just family. When Sunday came, I wore a navy skirt and a soft white blouse with a scalloped collar. I tucked a pin at my throat, the one Harold gave me on our 20th anniversary. Edith drove me over, even though I told her I could manage. It's not about managing, she said. It's about letting people care. The house was decorated with framed photos of buildings and street signs, Franklin Maple, the old library, the corner bakery that almost didn't make it through the storm. In the center of the room was a table set with candles and a small placard, Ashby District Dedication Dinner. Emily stood beside it, proud and glowing. Jackson came forward and gave a short speech, nervous, a little stiff at first, but his voice steadied. He spoke about history and family, and how sometimes we miss what's right in front of us because we expect it to look louder or shinier than it does. He said he wanted Emily to grow up knowing that legacy isn't always written in big gestures, but in quiet choices, in buildings cared for people, remembered names spoken with respect. Then he raised his glass and said, "To Mom, for holding this town together, one brick at a time." There were no reporters, no stage, just family, a few neighbors, and a casserole in the oven. I looked around that room and saw something I hadn't seen in years: attention without expectation. Love unmeasured. No one interrupting. No one looking past me. Just listening. On the way home, Edith turned to me at a red light and said, "You did good, Margaret. You didn't just outlast them. You outlived the need to prove anything." I looked out the window at the town I'd known my whole life: storefronts, restored sidewalks, swept lampposts, painted new each spring. I saw pieces of myself in every corner. Not loud, not shiny, but lasting. Sometimes people forget who you are because they never really saw you to begin with. But when the truth has deep roots, it doesn't need permission to grow. It waits quiet, steady, until the day it blooms where everyone can see it. If you've ever felt overlooked or made to feel small in your own story, I hope you remember this. Silence doesn't mean absence. And grace, when it comes, often arrives without applause. Thank you for listening all the way through. If this story reminded you of someone, share it with them. And if it reminded you of yourself, know that you're not alone. I'm glad you're here.